A prince forces a waitress to play the piano to humiliate her, but her performance leaves him speechless. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more exclusive stories. It was a late summer evening in Manhattan, and the bustling city lights seemed to reflect across every polished surface of the Mayfair, one of the most talked-about restaurants on the East Side. Elegant couples, dressed in their best, chatted over meals that were as much a work of art as the decor around them. In the soft glow of pendant lamps, waiters in crisp uniforms moved briskly, carrying trays of delicacies that teased the senses with their aromatic presence. Behind the scenes, the restaurant staff bustled about with their usual grace under pressure. The manager, Caroline Reed, a meticulous woman in her early 40s, kept a close eye on every table. She prided herself on providing a top-tier experience for her patrons. A last-minute phone call from a certain Mr. Nicholas von Adelhard, mentioning royal status, had piqued her curiosity and set everyone on edge. She had heard rumors over the years about foreign nobility who liked to drop by unannounced to sample some of the best American cuisine, and this evening seemed to be shaping up into one of those unpredictable nights. Amid this orchestrated chaos was Emily Carter, a waitress who'd started a few months before. In her early 20s, with gentle brown eyes and dark hair pulled back into a tidy bun, she was known for her polite warmth. Emily was the type of person who would remember regular customers' names and the small details of their lives. Despite her genuine friendliness, she tended to keep her own passions private. The staff knew she sometimes played the piano in her spare time, but no one truly realized how deep her talent ran. That evening, a sense of anticipation filled the air. Emily brought fresh cutlery to a newly reserved table by the large windows. Outside, the city was alive with the glow of neon signs and passing cars, their headlights sweeping across the restaurant's interior. Suddenly, the front doors swung open, and the hush that fell over the place was immediate. A tall figure stepped in, flanked by two imposing men in dark suits. The new arrival carried himself with an unmistakable air of confidence. He was around 30, with carefully styled blonde hair, sharp features, and an expensive tailored suit. A small brooch on his lapel featured a crest unfamiliar to most diners, but it lent an unmistakable sense of importance to his appearance. The two bodyguards stayed close, scanning every corner of the restaurant with quiet vigilance. Caroline approached with her best professional smile. "Good evening, sir," she greeted him. "Welcome to the Mayfair. Do you have a reservation?" The man nodded curtly. "Yes, under Prince Nicholas von Adelhard," he replied in a low, smooth voice. His accent bore traces of a European upbringing, slightly Germanic, though his English was flawless. Caroline, unflappable by nature, responded with the same cordial charm. "Of course, Your Highness. We have your table all ready for you." He followed her to the elegantly set table near the window, nodding in approval at the muted ambience. The other guests, sensing that something unusual was afoot, peeked over their menus. Murmurs of speculation rippled across the dining room. Was he really a prince? Which country was he from? And why had he come here on such short notice? Emily, spotting Caroline's subtle beckon, approached the table to welcome the newcomer and offer the menu. "Good evening," she said politely, placing the menu before him. "My name is Emily, and I'll be your server tonight. Can I get you something to drink to start?" Prince Nicholas offered her a brief look that mixed curiosity and aloofness. "I'll have a glass of your finest red wine," he said, his voice steady with the self-assured tone of someone used to the highest of standards. "And have your sommelier pick it for me." Emily nodded. "Absolutely, Your Highness. Right away." She gave a small, respectful dip of her head and left to relay his request to the bar. By the time the prince's wine arrived, the restaurant's once lively chatter had turned hushed. People tried discreetly to catch a glimpse of him sipping from the ornate crystal glass, and the prince appeared to bask in the attention. Though he never directly acknowledged the stares, he seemed to know he was being watched. Caroline hovered by, ensuring that the staff delivered impeccable service. Yet beneath the surface, a sense of uncertainty buzzed. Not often did real royalty dine so openly among them, and no one quite knew how the evening would unfold. Emily balanced the prince's dinner plate, a perfectly seared steak topped with fresh herbs, and gently placed it on the table. The prince offered a noncommittal nod, not even looking up at her, as though the very act of acknowledging a waitress was beneath him. She flashed a friendly smile, unaffected by his distant manner. After all, she had dealt with difficult customers before. Rudeness and aloofness weren't entirely new to her. In the kitchen, Emily caught snippets of whispered conversations among the other waiters and chefs. "Is he really a prince?" asked Tim, a younger waiter with wide, curious eyes. That's what the manager said, replied Sophie, a seasoned waitress. He apparently contacted Ms. Reed a couple hours ago. No one wants to risk offending him. Emily shrugged as she collected clean utensils for her next round of tables. Royalty or not, he's still just another customer, she said. We treat everyone with the same respect here, right? Sophie gave Emily a look that suggested caution. Yes, but you'd better be careful. Some of these types can be extra sensitive if they feel they're not being treated like they're special. Emily nodded, well aware that the evening might hold more challenges than a normal shift. After placing silverware on a nearby table, she turned her attention back to Prince Nicholas. He was sipping his wine, gaze wandering around the restaurant, a slight look of boredom flickering on his features. She refilled his water glass, politely inquiring if there was anything else he needed. He glanced at her name tag. Emily, he said slowly, his tone more curious than friendly. You've worked here long? Just a few months, sir. I mean, Your Highness, she replied, feeling a little awkward about the formal address. But I'm enjoying my time here so far. He took a moment before responding, as if weighing her words. You look like someone who might have other interests, he finally commented. How does one end up waiting tables? Do you have bigger plans? She paused, unsure how to answer without revealing too much. I'm saving up for music school. I play piano, she admitted softly, surprising herself by volunteering this information so readily. Usually, she kept her musical aspirations under wraps, worried about others' judgments or the pressure that came with their expectations. Prince Nicholas tapped his fingers on the table, the hint of a smile on his lips. A pianist, he murmured, his tone making it sound almost like a peculiar curiosity. Then why are you not studying at a conservatory somewhere in Europe? It said the best ones are there. Emily forced a polite laugh. I'm hoping to apply to a school here in New York soon, she said, deflecting. She really didn't want to talk about her private goals with a stranger, much less a prince who seemed bent on finding fault or exuding superiority. He gave a small nod and turned his attention back to his steak, dismissing her. She felt a mix of relief and discomfort and went about her duties, making sure the other tables were well attended. The prince's attitude, casually disparaging, with that faint condescending smirk, lingered in the back of her mind. After the main course, Emily cleared the plate and offered dessert options. To her surprise, Prince Nicholas asked, Does this place have a piano? A grand piano, perhaps? She blinked, startled by his sudden change of topic. Yes, we do. The Mayfair has a baby grand near the lounge area, she explained. But it's mostly used for occasional live music on the weekends. The prince smiled, though the gesture lacked genuine warmth. I see, he said, and left it at that. Emily felt a prickle of unease as she stepped away from the table. She had the distinct impression that the conversation about the piano wasn't over. The evening rolled on, and the hum of conversation around the dining area began to pick up again. Diners chatted about the delicious courses, upcoming Broadway shows, and weekend plans. But Prince Nicholas remained an undeniable focal point. Guests frequently cast sideways glances to see if he might do something theatrical or dramatic. Caroline approached him after he had finished his dessert. Your Highness, she said with a courteous nod, I trust that everything is to your satisfaction? He leaned back in his chair, regarding her with measured calm. Yes, the food is adequate, he replied, though his faintly dismissive tone suggested he considered it only passable. However, I'm curious about something your waitress mentioned earlier. She said there's a piano here. Caroline's smile twitched slightly, but she recovered her composure quickly. That's right. We have a baby grand in the lounge. Would you like to see it? He lifted an eyebrow, as though the request were more of an order. I would. Standing up, he smoothed a hand over his suit jacket. Please, lead the way. The lounge was a cozy extension of the main dining room, separated by Art Deco glass doors and lined with plush velvet armchairs. A glossy black baby grand piano stood on a small raised platform at one end of the room, an elegant ornament for the occasions when the restaurant hired professional pianists. Prince Nicholas walked over and ran his hand along the polished finish of the instrument, nodding approvingly. So, you hire pianists to entertain the guests? He asked. Caroline, who had followed him, answered, Yes, occasionally. Usually on weekends or for private events. Tonight, we didn't have any scheduled performer, as you arrived rather unexpectedly. He gave a quiet hum, then turned to spot Emily standing at the threshold, uncertain whether she was meant to follow or not. He beckoned her over with a single motion of his hand. Emily, he said, come here. Her stomach clenched with nerves, but she forced a smile and approached. Yes, Your Highness? You told me you play piano, he stated, his voice echoing a bit in the more open lounge. A few patrons, sensing something interesting was unfolding, wandered over, trying to keep a polite distance. Emily swallowed, wondering where this was going. I do, she said evenly. He gave her a short nod, then made a show of stepping back and gesturing toward the piano bench. "Play something for us." A hush settled over the lounge, as though everyone there felt the tension. Caroline's eyes darted between the prince and Emily, unsure if she should protest on her employee's behalf. Emily hesitated, her heart pounding. She had never performed publicly in the middle of her shift, and certainly not under the stare of a foreign prince who seemed almost amused by the possibility she might fail. She began, looking at Caroline uncertainly. She didn't want to cause trouble, nor did she want to appear insolent by refusing. But she also felt uneasy about giving the prince exactly what he wanted if his motive was to mock her. Prince Nicholas's smile widened, though it carried an air of superiority. "Come now, unless you were exaggerating your abilities. I'm quite sure we'd all love to hear a waitress-turned-pianist show off." Some of the guests in the lounge exchanged looks. They could read the undercurrent of his words. He was testing her, possibly hoping to see her flounder. A few quiet murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Emily took a breath, decided she had no desire to cower under his arrogance, and finally inclined her head. "All right," she said, stepping toward the piano bench. The keys glinted under the gentle spotlight that illuminated the small stage area. She sat down and, for a moment, ran her fingertips lightly over the keyboard, familiarizing herself with the feel of it. She closed her eyes and took another steadying breath. Prince Nicholas clasped his hands behind his back, standing at a short distance, eager to witness her performance, with a dismissive smirk on his face. Caroline bit her lip, hoping Emily wouldn't embarrass herself under so much pressure. In the hush, Emily pressed the first chord. The notes resonated in the lounge, and she adjusted her posture, letting muscle memory guide her. A pang of adrenaline coursed through her chest, but she resolved to keep her focus on the music. She chose a piece that was both technically interesting and melodic, something she'd practiced countless times in solitude, a piece that had always made her heart soar whenever she played it. For the first few measures, her hands moved carefully as she adjusted to the piano's touch. The hush in the lounge deepened, and more diners gravitated from the main room, drawn by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Then, as Emily found her rhythm, the room came alive with a melodic and confident stream of notes, each flowing seamlessly into the next. The tension that had gripped her melted away as she immersed herself in the music. A gentle hush fell over the restaurant as plates and glasses were momentarily forgotten. Even the bartenders paused their work to listen. The piece soared, shifting from soft, delicate passages to bold crescendos that demonstrated Emily's control and emotional depth. Her expression transformed. Gone was the slightly timid waitress who quietly served tables. In her place sat a musician in her element, eyes half closed, body swaying gently with each phrase, fully committed to delivering a performance from the heart. Stunned silence overtook the lounge. Prince Nicholas's smug grin began to fade with each perfectly placed note. It became increasingly clear that he had greatly underestimated Emily's skill. He looked around, noticing how every guest was riveted by the unexpected display of mastery. A middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair whispered to her companion, "My God, she's incredible." "I had no idea." Tim, the younger waiter, stood at the edge of the lounge, slack-jawed. Sophie, arms folded, wore an expression that glowed with pride on Emily's behalf. Caroline, meanwhile, stopped wringing her hands and let out a silent sigh of relief, a small smile curving at the corners of her lips. Even the two bodyguards who accompanied the prince showed faint flickers of admiration. Their stony exterior softened, as if they too were momentarily captivated by the artistry unfolding before them. As Emily reached the climax of the piece, a bold run of scales, followed by dramatic chords, she poured all her passion into the music. The final notes swelled and rang out clearly in the hushed air. Then silence. A silence brimming with awe, as though no one dared breathe for fear of spoiling the moment. After a beat, someone began to clap. It was a hesitant clap at first, but within seconds, the entire lounge erupted into applause. Diners in the main room craned their necks to see what was happening, and those who had caught the performance were on their feet, cheering. Emily remained seated at the piano, her cheeks flushed, both from exertion and from the sudden surge of attention. She stood and offered a modest bow, the applause washing over her in waves. For a young woman who had never sought the spotlight, it was an overwhelming moment. Still, she couldn't deny the exhilaration coursing through her veins, a validation of her countless hours of practice and her quiet but fervent love of music. Prince Nicholas, blinking as though he'd just been awakened from a dream, tried to mask his surprise. He coughed into his hand, attempting to regain the calm demeanor of a man in control. But the approving roars from the crowd would not subside easily, and his expression hinted that he knew the tables had turned. Caroline hurried over to Emily, her eyes bright with admiration. "Emily," she whispered, leaning in, "that was absolutely incredible." "Thank you." She then looked at the prince, who remained rooted in place, expression carefully neutral. Indeed, Prince Nicholas said, his voice straining to maintain composure. That was quite an unexpected display. Emily met his gaze. Rather than gloating, she simply gave him a polite, almost deferential nod. But the message was clear to everyone present. The prince had tried to humiliate her, and it had backfired in a grand, spectacular fashion. A ripple of amusement passed among the onlookers as they realized that Prince Nicholas's grand plan, whatever it might have been, had completely collapsed under the sheer power of Emily's talent. When the applause finally died down, Emily stepped away from the piano, walking back toward the main dining area. Onlookers parted to let her pass, offering congratulatory smiles and nods. Strangers reached out to pat her on the back. A few even murmured their compliments or asked if she performed professionally. Emily could only manage a series of polite thank yous, her face still flushed with adrenaline. Prince Nicholas lingered by the piano, and for a moment, he appeared genuinely unsure of what to do next. One of his bodyguards leaned over to whisper something to him, perhaps suggesting it was time to leave. But the prince cleared his throat and seemed determined to salvage what was left of his dignity. He approached Emily with a measured pace. "That was an impressive performance," he said, though his eyes flicked around the restaurant, where the curious gazes of the patrons continued to follow him. "You must have practiced that piece quite often." Emily nodded, still polite, though her exhaustion was beginning to set in. "Yes, it's one of my favorites." Silence stretched between them. Then, with a pinched smile, Prince Nicholas added, "I didn't intend to embarrass you. I merely wanted to see if you were as capable as you claimed." A small crowd that had gathered within earshot traded skeptical looks. Most everyone understood the prince's challenge for what it was, a thinly veiled attempt at humiliation. Emily, sensing their stares, kept her composure. "Well, I'm glad I got the chance to play," she said, maintaining her respectful tone. There was no need to gloat. Her music had done the talking for her. One of the prince's bodyguards stepped forward, murmuring, "Your Highness, perhaps we should be on our way. You have another engagement." Prince Nicholas looked around. The atmosphere had shifted, the sense of awe now mingled with a faint undercurrent of amusement directed at him. The last thing he needed was to linger and give people more opportunity to indulge in that collective smirk. Nodding, he straightened his jacket and made his way back to his table, where he signed off on his bill with a quick flick of the pen. Caroline hurried over, eager to smooth any remaining wrinkles. "We hope you enjoyed your evening, Your Highness," she said in her best professional voice. "We would be honored to serve you again." He glanced at her briefly, then cast one final look toward Emily, who stood at a distance. She felt the weight of his stare but did not back down. If he'd hoped to see her cower, he would leave disappointed. Without further comment, Prince Nicholas swept out, his bodyguards following in lockstep. The door closed behind them with a soft thud, leaving the restaurant in a collective exhale of relief and lingering energy. In the aftermath, a wave of conversation surged through the room, with customers debating in hushed tones what had just transpired. Some found the prince's arrogance appalling, others found it darkly amusing, and nearly everyone agreed that Emily's performance was an unforgettable highlight of the night. As Emily passed by a group of diners returning to their seats, one woman with a warm smile stopped her gently. "You play so beautifully, dear," she said. "Please don't ever stop." Emily thanked her softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. She spotted Caroline motioning for her to come over. Emily obliged. "Emily," Caroline began, her face aglow with excitement, "I don't even know where to start. That was absolutely remarkable. If you ever want to play here on a regular basis, on your off days, or even if you'd like a slot on our weekend entertainment schedule, please let me know." Emily blinked. An opportunity like that had never crossed her mind. She'd been so focused on saving money, quietly refining her skills, and dreaming of a future in music school that she hadn't considered playing professionally in a local venue. I'd love to," she stammered at last, a thrilled smile lighting up her features. Sophie and Tim were quick to join them, wearing proud grins of their own. Sophie clapped Emily on the shoulder. "Girl, you were amazing. I mean, I knew you played piano, but not like that." Tim nodded eagerly. "Seriously, Emily, that was epic. The prince tried to humiliate you, and you showed him up in the best way possible." Emily laughed, a wave of relief washing away her earlier nervousness. "Thanks, guys. Honestly, I'm just glad it all turned out okay." "Okay." Tim gave her a playful nudge. "It was more than okay. That was unforgettable." The rest of the night passed in a whirl of enthusiastic conversations, extra generous tips, and congratulatory remarks from nearly every table. Word spread quickly among the patrons that the Mayfair had a hidden talent in its ranks. Even after the late-night crowd thinned out, Emily felt the electricity of the evening still buzzing inside her. By the time closing rolled around, she helped clear the last tables, stow the freshly washed glasses, and dim the overhead lights. Caroline caught up with her one final time before she left. Emily, I just wanted to say again, thank you for handling all that so gracefully. You'll let me know if you want to take up that offer to play on weekends, right? Absolutely, Emily assured her, giving a gentle smile. I really appreciate it. Tonight has been something else. They said their goodbyes, and Emily stepped out onto the sidewalk, the lights of the city twinkling all around. The night air was cool on her skin, the hum of traffic a comforting reminder that life in Manhattan never truly went to sleep. She glanced back at the Mayfair's entrance, a soft glow emanating from the windows. A small laugh escaped her lips as she thought about how the night began versus how it ended. She had started her shift like any other, uncertain if the new high-profile patron would bring trouble or reward. In the end, Prince Nicholas had offered both, a chance to prove herself and the adrenaline rush that came from performing under pressure. She had taken his challenge and turned it into an opportunity that might just open more doors for her musical dreams. Focusing her gaze down the street, Emily started walking. She thought about the countless hours of piano practice in her tiny apartment, the sacrifices, the times she doubted herself, and the unwavering love she had for music. The future felt promising, alive with potential and crackling possibility. She promised herself she wouldn't shy away from any opportunity that let her share her gift with the world, even if that opportunity came wrapped in the arrogance of a royal title. As for Prince Nicholas, she suspected he might not be so quick to challenge an unsuspecting waitress ever again.